Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Finns Faithful Podcast. Thanks for joining us on this Monday evening. You guys know we're with you guys here live on YouTube, so go ahead and hit that little bell, subscribe. Not only subscribe, but turn your notifications. So that's important to get to know when we go live, so you don't miss anything. All right, well, first week of free agency is in the books. Dolphins were busy. They were even signed somebody today. We'll give you the updated list of the players the Dolphins signed. But more importantly, we're going to kind of take a look how it affects the draft. Has the needs changed, or if anything changed? And kind of we'll break it down in tiers, the positional needs for the draft. We'll also take a look at new personnel hire, Champ Kelly, who's formerly with the Raiders. Why I feel maybe that signing in the front office may have some significance more than, let's say, a Marvin Allen or Reggie McKenzie in the past, and how it could affect Chris Grier in the future, maybe. To do all that, I'm joined by reappearing on the show. I think the last time we had you on was towards the end of the season. My man Kadeem Simmons from the Go Time Dolphins podcast with his partner Charlie. Kadeem, brother, how you doing, man? You're out in the UK. It's late for you. Thank you for joining me.
No worries, man. Yeah, I'm in the UK. If you can't tell by the accent, it's currently 11:30 at night. So it's a late one for me, but I think I've been doing this for 6 years now. Late nights are just part of the course when you have a Miami Dolphins podcast and your podcast partner is based in the States. So it is what it is. But no, thanks for having me once again. Long overdue. And yeah, can't wait to dive into everything we're going to talk about.
Yeah, so let's get into it. I guess quickly, let's start here. I didn't have you on after the end of the season. Your kind of thoughts how everything ended with Tyreek, bringing back McDaniel, bringing back Grier, the whole situation, the tough loss to the Jets. Anything surprise you that happened before we get into the free agency? What happened at the end of the year?
No, nothing surprised me. Wasn't surprised to lose to the Jets. If Tua doesn't play, we don't beat the Jets. That's just how it's been over the last few years. In no way surprised the Dolphins brought back, Chris Grier, Mike McDaniel. I think anyone who thought that Stephen Ross was going to move on from them, that was more wishful thinking. And the Tyreek Hill thing, no, again, not surprising in terms of you kind of knew that Tyreek Hill had not so much off the field issues, but that he's always going to speak his mind. And say we won about him, he's a winner. He doesn't know how to lose. There's losing on a week to week basis, but like he said, at the end of the season, I've never not made the playoffs. So you get someone who, for the first time in his career, hasn't made the playoffs. He's only going to react one way. And like I said on the Go Time Dolphins show, there are so many Miami Dolphin fans who quit on the team during the season. I was in Hard Rock Stadium week 2 when we lost to Buffalo, and people left that game early and said, I'm selling my season ticket, I'm quitting on this team, I don't care this season. And then those same people got angry when Tyreek Hill said, I'm quitting on the team. Like, to me, I don't understand how you as a fan can get angry at a player for quitting when you would quit as well. So no, nothing surprised me. Here we are in March, and I'm interested to see what the Dolphins do over the next few weeks, because this is going to be quite a big draft and off season.
Yeah, I guess I would say I don't want to get too much into Tyreek, but like the first moment he knew he wasn't making the playoffs, he quit on the team though. Like, is that a guy who says he wants to win, is competitive? Does that kind of guy mail it in? In the late in the third quarter of your last game of the season. Like, to me, your first time you showed that you weren't gonna advance to the next level, you showed me your true colors, who you were. That's kind of my concern. And look, he's on the wrong side of 30. And you're not going to tell me, Kadeem, this is not going to reap its head again. I mean,
Oh no,
yeah.
it will 100%. But then that's why I said Tyreek Hill quit in the third quarter of the last game. And if you was on social media during the season, how many times did you see fans say, "I'm quitting on this team. I don't care about the season"?
Yeah, but
Like, and I get it. One's a
different.
player,
Yeah,
one's a fan.
yeah.
It is 100% different. But my thing was, you quit on, or some fans quit on the team, and then got angry when players quit on the team. It's like you've both done the same thing. The only difference is one done it a lot later. And I'm in no way
Yeah,
excusing
yeah.
Tyreek Hill, like, not at all. There were guys like Calais Campbell who probably had a chance to leave during the season because we knew in week 8 we weren't making the playoffs. There were guys who, could have left to make the playoffs, and they stayed. Tyreek Hill should have played until the very final snap, but I'm not angry that
Right,
he chose to quit simply because he's human, and
right.
we've all been there, whether we like it or not.
I mean, I guess the difference is you and I are not making $30 million in the freight, and we're not the face of the franchise. And if we quit, it doesn't directly have any effect on the team on the field. If us fans say, "Ah, screw it, I hate this team, I'm done," it has no effect on the field on field situation. He
Mm.
does. He's one of the top 2 or 3 faces of this franchise. So it wasn't a good look. But you know what? Let's not get too much into Tyree.
Yeah.
We beat the dead horse. Shout out to DSG Evan. Yo, the dive bar. My boy Bobby Schultz back on land, brother. We got to get you on the show. Boy, check out all the boy at the Dive Bar podcast. They're killing it. Last week they had Teron Armstead on. Check that episode out. Shout out to the boys there at the Dive Bar. All right, so let's kind of we talked about free agency. Let's bring up a little list here, an updated list on who the Dolphins actually have signed. Here's the list, the latest. Let me go over the 2 latest ones. The punter we maybe or maybe not get into. Who cares? The one they signed today, Artie Burns, if anybody knows him, local kid down here, Miami Northwestern High School, first round pick out of UM in 2016 to Pittsburgh. He's a bunch of these guys have connections to the guy we're going to talk about later, Champ Kelly. So that's something to keep an eye on. But yeah, Artie Burns does not move the needle on your cornerback need. He's a depth player. His first few years in his career, he was kind of coming on as a young player, but he's been injured. I think he only played 4 games last year for the Seahawks. He's a veteran depth signing in that room to bring some competition with Cam Smith and Storm Duck and Cater Cole and those guys. And the other guy, Farrell Brown, the tight end, played, I believe, started 7 games last year for the Seahawks and 11 for the Patriots the year before. An inline guy, a blocker, doesn't going to offer much in the passing game. I think the most career receptions he's had is about 23 in a career. So he's kind of that Durham Smythe role with / Julian Hill. So, it's replacing Durham. Again, nothing earth-shattering, but more of a depth signing. But, people have heard my opinion on this class. Generally, their approach this offseason, Kadeem, and kind of what do you feel about this free agent class so far, a week into it?
It doesn't move the needle. Like, I'm not sitting here going, "Oh my days, I can't wait to see player X do anything." I think there's quite a few players on that list who probably won't be there come week 1. Let alone the end of the season. But which is fine. We are a week into free agency. It's probably a matter of sign some guys so that teams don't snipe us in the draft. Like, if we don't sign a single offensive lineman, then teams know at pick 13, pick 48, we're definitely going to go offensive line. The only issue is that in the nicest way possible, yes, you picked up James Daniels. No one is sitting here going, the Dolphins aren't going to take an offensive lineman because they picked up Larry Borum. Like, people aren't stupid. Same way people aren't going, the Dolphins aren't going to pick up a safety because they picked up 2 in free agency. No, the Dolphins are going to pick up a safety probably quite early on in the draft. So these are, I wouldn't even call some of these guys even depth pieces either. I think it's just, hey, you're here for camp, and if it pans out, then great, brilliant. But please understand, the contract you just signed might be torn up in 6 months. That's just the way football works. And yeah, nothing really gets me excited. But at the same time, I hope I'm wrong. I hope some of these guys turns out to be, genuine key pieces, not just this year, over the next few years. Same way when we picked up Johnny Smith, no one was like, "Oh my days, we got Johnny Smith." A year later, it's like, "Oh my days, he's probably one of the best tight ends, of last season in the whole NFL."
Yeah, I could see that with kind of like a Melifonwu, the safety from Detroit. I agree with you. I said this on many shows that I've been on, including my own, that this class doesn't move the needle for me. And we're going to break it down in tiers after this, the kind of the draft needs. I think it just lessens some needs, but it doesn't really take a need off the board at all entering the free agency. It might move it up a tier or down a tier, the need, but none of these guys, besides with the exception of James Daniels, I think moves the needle at that position where you say it's off the board in the draft. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, 100%. And I think even with James Daniel, you kind of
The injury.
Yeah, but also like the Dolphins over the last few years, they've picked up guys in free agency who you think are going to be key pieces, and then they've gone. Odell Beckham Jr. didn't last the season. David Long Jr. was made captain. He went. Um, you know, I think someone just said, sorry, what was the comment that we've got worse from last year?
This
Um,
comment, yeah, there it is from
yeah,
Tony. Shout out Tony.
yeah, free agency has been terrible. We are worse than we were a year ago. I don't think that's the case, but I don't think we've got better by much. Like it's definitely up for debate,
Yeah,
but you know, if you look at the starting guard last year and you've added James Daniel, then you've definitely improved. And to be fair, Nick Westbrook Akine needs to probably get what 10 receptions for 50 yards to have a better season than Odell Beckham Jr. So, like, in some pieces, Ashton Davis needs to not play like the worst safety in football to be better than Jordan Poyer. So, you know, I'm not sitting here saying this is an amazing draft class. Um, but
free
I
agent
can't
class.
sit
Yeah.
here, so free agent class, but I can't sit here and say that we're worse than we were a year ago because I don't think we are. But it's also, we don't know. And yeah, we could look back in 6 months or 7, 8 months and go, wow, the Dolphins took another huge step back.
That's very shout out Kenny in the chat. Shout out everybody in the chat. If you're watching anywhere but YouTube, please come on over to YouTube. Hit that little bell. It takes a second. I know I hate to ask for it, but it helps support the channel. Kadeem knows it means a lot to the channel when all you do is take a second, hit that like button, hit that little bell, and not only subscribe to the channel, but turn on the notifications so you find out when you go live. Because a lot of times I subscribe and I don't know when somebody goes live. So we appreciate that. Again, we're joined by Kadeem Simmons from the Go Time Dolphins podcast. Yeah, like Kenny says, our guards can't be worse than last season. So let's take a look here. He made an interesting point. When you look at this list, right? We'll get into some of the guys you like, but where have they gotten better? Like we've lost some guys at these positions. Is there a position where you say, I think the one that stands out is James Daniels over Robert Jones or Liam Eichenberg, even though they brought Eichenberg back. But like, where did they get better? I think that's what the fans are kind of trying to figure out before we get the draft. Where are we better?
Um, like I said, you're probably a bit of a wide receiver free position because
Yeah,
Odell
I
Beckham
agree.
really didn't do much. But then, you can kind of say that Washington came on quite well toward the back end of the season. So, wide receiver wasn't a massive need. Ryan Stonehouse, the punter, could be a good addition if you get the Ryan Stonehouse that has been in Tennessee, as opposed to, if he declines off a cliff.
Yeah,
Um, and then again, you look at the safety play over the last 12 months. These guys have to basically tackle, and you're probably going to say you probably improved that safety. But again, I think the bar is so low in some of these positions. Again, Zach Wilson, I hope we don't have to see him. And by the end of the season, Huntley was a somewhat decent backup. But again, it's we sh- we shouldn't be sitting here going, how come we didn't beat the
yeah,
Jets in the final week of the season? And not quarterback wasn't an issue, but also, yeah, we've improved in maybe one or two positions, but again, the bar was so low.
yeah.
I don't think that's something we should be, writing home about.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. I agree with you. I think the guard position with James Daniels is an upgrade if healthy. That's clear. That's the obvious one. I agree with you on the wide receiver. I like NWI. He's really up and coming there in Tennessee. And look at the quarterback play he was with. I think he's an upgrade. And you still have, Malik, and you have Taj Washington, who got
Yeah,
hurt the pick last year. So you have in the mix. Punter, yeah, I think could be an upgrade. Melifon was a guy who I think at $4 million a year, I think could be this year's Jordan Brooks type signing. He's a guy. He was coming on in 23. Kadeem got hurt twice last year. Really good down the hill in the box safety, and at his size, 6'3", 210, pretty competent in pass coverage. If you watch some of the film, so like he's a guy again. The health is the key word with all these guys,
yeah,
right? And that's kind of where Miami had to live because it's pretty clear overall they had a number. They weren't going higher on many players. Their highest paid guy was James Daniels. The rest were guys that they saw maybe were hurt, and they bring him in their situation and kind of squeeze more of the juice out of them. So I think Melifanu, I don't mind Ashton Davis. I think he's going to give you stuff on special teams and a part-time starter. So I think those are the positions, and how much it's hard not to improve from the backup quarterback position with Zach Wilson. And at least he's young and there's some ability and arm talent there. So I'm fine with that. But I think the great point that the Dive Bar podcast Bobby made is, man, they're setting themselves. They have to hit a home run in this draft. Like, you thought last year was a nice draft because they had Chop Robinson. Guys, that wasn't good enough. He's the only contributor in that draft class. They're going to have guys who contribute in the first and second round, day one. Enough of this, we're planning for a year ahead. They're riding the bench behind this player. No. You won't have a job. And Champ Kelly will be the new GM. Okay? Yeah. If you do that. You got to get guys. You got to hit like Philadelphia. 2 guys in their secondary playing last year. Or these other teams that are competing. Enough of this stuff where these guys we're planning for a year ahead. First and second round picks, got to play now this year. I agree. You agree with that? They got to hit a home run.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, you kind of put yourself in a situation again where unless they and some of it is also I guess names, like if they pick up a Justin Simmons, a Garrett Bradbury who's just been released.
Yeah, I like him a lot.
Yeah, no, you pick up some name value.
Yeah, again, we're only in week 1, but most of the guys are gone. The most significant guys are going to move the needle. There's a few out there, but most of them are gone, right?
But then I think my overall point is move the needle in terms of name value, because I think some of the issue with the guys we brought in is that they're not big names, the people who I guess in Lee Meichenberg is a good example. People do not like Lee Meichenberg. That is totally fine. No. And there will be people who will turn around and say, well, no one else in the NFL wanted him. He was there for essentially most of the first week, and you picked him up. If I'm going to be extremely petty, I'll say, yeah, but same with Ashton Davis. Ashton Davis was there for a few days and no one wanted him. James Daniel was there for a few days. No one wanted him. Like, unless you go in the first few minutes of free agency, you've been released by your team, or your team has decided to not pick you up, and no one wanted you. So you are basically a dreg. Not in a bad way, but yeah. So again, free agency, like the draft, you're not going to hit on all of these people. You mentioned it earlier. A lot of these guys are if healthy guys, which is how Chris Grier has had his tenure. Basically, if healthy, they're going to be good. But yeah, as the Dive Bar podcast said, we need to know the draft, because if not, do not be surprised if by week 7, week 8, the Dolphins are looking for a new GM and head coach, and it could be a situation where we saw with Philbin, where we go to Spain, the Dolphins lose, and then they don't get off that plane, and that's the end of their Miami Dolphins career. So we'll see, but that's a long way away.
Yeah. Who's your favorite signing, at least kind of favorite signing on this list?
Favorite signing probably would be James Daniels, because he, again, if healthy, he's going to be a starting guard, not just this year, but for years. And he also brings that leadership, which you might lose if Teron Armstead isn't retained or decides to retire or whatever. Not even to be controversial, my least the pick I dislike the most is Alexander Mattison.
I agree. I agree. I'm not a big fan of his. And I love this running back. We'll get into the tiers, but I love this running back class. Not to cut you off, Kadeem. I wanted them to take a big back in the draft, and I hope they still do.
I don't even think Mattison is a big back. And in the sense
size-wise, yeah.
In the sense that I think I saw a stat that of his 16 third and short or fourth and short runs, he got the first down in 12 of them. But I'm also looking at some of those runs against us, where the hole was so big he couldn't not get the first down. I think Alexander Mattison is someone who he needs a good offensive line. And I think part of the issue with the Dolphins is that, one, they haven't had a good offensive line, but 2, they need a back who, if you hit him in the backfield, he's still going to stumble forward for 2-3 yards, as opposed to hit him in the backfield and it's a negative play for 2 to 3 yards. The Liam Meichenberg pick is one, in the nicest way possible. How did no one see that coming? I've been saying it all season, both on the podcast and in private. The Dolphins are going to retain Liam Meichenberg. He's not, if I'm being nice, he's not the best offensive lineman. If I'm being brutally honest, he's one of the worst. At the same time, the Dolphins picked him up on essentially next to nothing. I if you nail the draft, you won't see him back, you know, as the season progresses. But for people who say that Chris Grier is playing him because he picks him up in the second round and doesn't want to admit he's wrong, they kind of, to me anyway, it ignored the likes of Cam Smith and Channing Tindall. Cam Smith was a second round pick. He went to college or high school with Chris Grier's son, and we haven't seen him. Chris Grier has no issue not playing first, second, third round talent if they're crap. Liam Eichenberg is crap, but due to failings elsewhere, he's kind of had to play. But this whole nonsense that, well, Liam Eichenberg plays because he's a second round pick is just it's nonsense, because there are literal guys who have drafted after Liam Eichenberg in the second round who have no future in Miami, like I said, in Cam Smith. Cam Smith hasn't played in 2 years, even when healthy, hasn't been a factor, and we're taking in the second round. If your logic that Liam Eichenberg only plays because he's taking the second round, then Cam Smith would play, and he doesn't. So Eichenberg isn't a good player. No offense to Liam Eichenberg, but we all knew he was coming back. That's just the way the NFL works.
Yeah, I think if Liam's your like seventh or eighth offensive lineman, that's fine. I think they like Liam in the building more than the fans do. I think that's just the bottom line. Like, they like him in the building. I think the offensive line coach likes him. Again, my concern is they're comfortable with him. You draft a guy and you're not. Is he going to be a stopgap in front of that guy, and we're end up seeing James Daniels and Liam Eichenberg starting? Because I still don't know the amount of money. It's kind of mysterious. Like, what is the actual contract here? I know it was up to like 4 point. Wasn't it like some crazy number, like up to 4.5? Like, it could go up to that. Or do you know, Kadeem, the actual contract with Liam?
No, I've seen the same thing you have. It's like, it's like the rumor is that 4.2 million.
That's starter.
Up to 4.2. But again, the way I see it is that up to 4.2 million will basically be
incentive based.
If you make the roster and incentive based. And again, so many people have said this, and I do agree. The issue with Liam Eichenberg has been, at least for the last 2 seasons, he's been a backup offensive lineman. But the Dolphins have either had injuries or bad offensive line play, which has meant that Liam Eichenberg has had to start in multiple games. And someone else also said someone like James Daniel, a bad James Daniels rep might be, okay, he gets beaten, but he recovers, and you don't get,
true.
Like,
it's so true.
But a bad Liam Eichenberg rep is on the
man.
floor, but at the same time,
he's solid the whole game, and then like 3 plays, it's just a disastrous rep, and he kind of overshadows everything. I agree with that, but still, you got to upgrade. You can't have Liam.
100%. I also think with Liam Eichenberg, it's got to the point now where that one bad rep will go viral, and people will ignore the entire game. He could have a really, really, really great game, but everyone will remember that one bad rep where he's on the floor or he gets beaten straight away. I don't like discussing Liam Eichenberg with people, because I feel like no matter how well he
their
does,
judgment is clouded on him. They can't look past.
And that's completely fair. But it's like, this isn't going to be a fair conversation because you hate the guy, and no matter what I say, I could show you 5. And this isn't real, so please, don't come me in the comments. Say he does start and has 6 amazing games. People will go, yeah, it doesn't matter. It's like, well, then at that point, again, it doesn't matter. Like, the guy cannot be redeemed in Miami. It's best if he does leave and he doesn't start, but we will see come week 1 and week 2 and X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. So again, I think transitioning here from the free agent signings, going to the draft now. And I'll bring up I made a little chart, a little tier chart, to make it easier here. Kind of the draft needs, right? Again, I think we both agree they haven't done anything to kind of take the needs off the table. They've maybe lessened the need. We can discuss, and we could switch it up if you think, and in the chat, do you think a position should be moved? Basically, tier 1 is like red flag. You don't think if we play tomorrow, we have a guy there capable of starting and lining up tomorrow, right? That's tier 1. Tier 2 is basically the safety position, right? Like, let's use that as an example. You brought in some guys, some are injured. You're not sure about them, but you have bodies there, but it's still a position we like to upgrade. And tier 3 is more of a want, right? Like, I want this on the team, but hey, we have higher needs. And don't get me wrong, I'm a BPA guy. So if you take any of these positions and you send me the argument, he's clearly the best player on the board, I'm okay with it. So in the chat or everywhere, if you think there's a position that needs to slide left or right, please let us know. Kadeem, I'll start with you. When you look at this tier, and we'll go over some players and kind of the strengths of it, where do you see? Do you agree with it, or would you move some things around?
I I agree with everything on this list. I think the issue, if I'm being super pedantic, I think guard and tackle is just one, like offensive line is just one big need. Like, again, Austin Jackson, when healthy, is great, but we know he's going to get injured for at least one game. And that's when he goes back into the whole conversation with the Liam Eichenberger to back up. So that's an issue. Same way, you know, guard is probably a bigger need because you don't have anyone to start at, let's assume, left guard, because right now it's probably penciled in to be Liam Eichenberg.
No.
That is an issue, 100%. But then I guess a bigger need, not a bigger need, but an adjacent need is cornerback, because you're looking at it going, well, Kader Kohu hasn't come back, Nick Needham hasn't come back, so Jalen Ramsey is going to start opposite Storm Duck, Ethan Bonner, and those are two guys who showed flashes last year, but could you rely on them for a full 17 games? I would. So yeah, so cornerback's a massive need, and then again, same defensive tackle. I think if I'm going to be annoyed at Chris Grier about one thing, it does sound like he is waiting for Calais Campbell to make up his decision and go, okay, if Campbell comes back, defensive tackle isn't such a big need. However, you've allowed guys to go to other teams waiting for Calais Campbell, and then that's very possible. That should never have been the case. It should have been a case where, hey, Calais, if you want to come back, great, brilliant. We've got your money there, but we're also going to sign other people, because if Calais Campbell decides in 2 weeks' time, I'm not going to return, then what? Now you are literally scraping the bottom of the barrel trying to find someone. So that tier 1 list is perfect.
Yeah.
Like I said, the only thing I would change is that offensive
guard and tackle. Right.
Yeah, like to me, it's offensive line, and I would even say, center as well, because Aaron Brewer is someone who can play guard as well. So if you get an absolutely amazing center, kick Aaron Brewer back out to guard and say, hey, we can work around it.
Yeah, the reason I separate him because, like, look, right now we just got Patrick Paul left tackle, and I think guard. I think this draft, and you did your. I know you had a mock draft in your show. On Thursday, guys, the on season, we're going to be hitting the cornerback group, so make sure you check that out on Thursday with Jason Sarney and myself at 8 p.m. Eastern. We'll be breaking down the cornerback group. But, like, the reason why I did guard and tackle is because we need, I think, a young player behind Patrick Paul, because I'm not – I like Paul. I like some things. He showed me he was better than I originally thought. What I learned about Paul is some of the wacky hand technique in college. Like, that's just how he plays, and he gets away with it because he's long and he's really strong for a guy with long arms. So, like, that kind of made me more comfortable with him, but I still have my concerns. And I'm talking about a guy like Charles Grant out of William & Mary. I love this kid. The athleticism, this guy, in the pick 98, let's say, somebody who's not a guard but is a tackle. However, this draft is loaded with guys who are tackles but also guard conversions. It is loaded because a lot of these tackles have short arms. The guard group on its own is not great, but when you add in the tackles that can play guard, it's a really good group. So I just think I want to, if we double dip at this position, I want to get a guy who we're going to bring in more to play in the interior, and then maybe a young kid or a young player at tackle with some upside, because I like some of the things I saw from Patrick Paul, but again, I'm not totally 100% sold on him yet. But anyways, I think if we're not sold on him, Teron Armstead will probably just come back in like August or September. But I agree with you. So, like, again, and this is needs right now, right? This could change. Like, for example, safety was in tier 1. Now, did they upgrade tremendously? They got two players who I think One has real starting potential. It could be really good, like this year's Sean Elliott. And then Ashtyn Davis, part-time starter, has some ball production, 8 picks in his career. I know the Dolphins loved him in the 2020 draft. I thought he was a consideration where they picked Raekwon Davis. So, like, safety went from tier 1 to tier 2. Like, this can slide. But, yeah, do you have any issues on the second or third tier besides the tackle thing? You agree, though, these are kind of the – because I had I'll be honest, and my brother, he goes, you know what, I had Ed Rusher at 3, and I had linebacker in 2. And he goes, you know what? I said, come here, debate this with me. Tell me what you think. And he convinced me, you know what, edge rusher, yeah, he's right. Linebackers more of a want. We got a couple guys there. We brought in back to our Dotson. Like, I moved Ed Rusher to 2. Would you slide anything from 2 to 3?
Like linebacker is edge rusher is another position where it's like if
sleeper position at 13 too.
Yeah, but looking at what the Dolphins currently have, and you go in, well, if Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb come back healthy, like Chubb is healthy, but if you get something out of them, great. And it's like, hey Cap, it's like, okay, cool, great. Linebacker is, it's linebacker is that really tricky situation where everyone wants a Fred Warner in the 6th round, but Fred Warner do not grow on trees. So I might switch linebacker and edge rusher.
Oh, so you had it where I originally had it. Yeah, that's where I originally had it.
Yeah, but only because, again, you might bring back. I feel like the guys we have in the building already, in like Murphy, and also you might bring back Ogba. You're probably going to start the season with like 5 guys who know the system. Like Ogba again had a sneaky decent season last year. Linebacker KJ Britt is like a pure run-stopping defender. I feel like the one thing the Dolphins haven't been able to find in years is a coverage linebacker, and until they do,
true
it really
3-down linebacker.
It really limits what you can do. I think the only with I think everything outside of edge rusher, so like in terms of tier 1 and tier 2, cornerback, tackle, guard.
I think that's a clear tier 1.
Yeah,
clear,
no, what
yeah.
I'm saying in terms of like, it's not just we need one guy. You probably need 2 guys. You probably need 2 defensive tackles, 2 guards, 2 tackles, 2 corners. So all of a sudden, you've at the moment got 10 picks, but I've just named 5 positions, and you need 2 guys. If we're being brutally realistic, that's all of your picks gone. Yeah. That's not even thinking about if you don't like Zach Wilson, you're going to need to draft a quarterback, which you should do every single year because you never know. That's also not going, let's go and get another cheap running back. So, not only do the Dolphins have to nail this draft, I genuinely think the Dolphins need to acquire more picks, but on, essentially in day 2, you need more day 2 and day 3 picks because, like you said, like others have said, this guard/tackle class is loaded. This defensive tackle class is loaded. And you're probably going to be able to get genuine day 1 starters in the 2nd, 3rd, and maybe even 4th round. You can't just have 1 or 2 picks. Like, you're going to need 5 or 6 picks in that group so you can come up with 2 guards, 2 defensive tackles, a safety, a corner, and go, do you know what? If it all pans out, we have just completely transformed not just the roster, but also you've basically made up for wasting all the picks you had in 2020, 2021, and 2022, if we're being brutally honest.
Yeah. So here's a couple of things I like to say in the draft always. I don't know about you. I'm always, not a lot of teams do this, but I'm always the best player available guy, right? Like, I don't know if you are, but like only a handful of teams have figured out the secret sauce, and most of them are in the playoffs or in the Super Bowl, that you get the best players in the building and you figure it out later, right? So like if you went off any of these tiers, again, no problem. Another thing I like to do is I like to draft whatever the positional strength of that draft is. I like to do it because you're going to get probably a full round value higher. Let's say the defensive tackle position in the 2nd round this year, a Derek Harmon or a Joshua Farmer. Some of these guys might be late 1st round picks in years. Like, you always draft, I always believe it. And I go back to the Jarvis Landry draft. When we drafted Jarvis Landry, nobody knew we were going to take a receiver, but it was such a deep class that I picked 60 or whatever it was. They took a wide receiver. They took Landry. And look what he ended up turning out to be. You take the positional strengths of this draft, and the good news is it marries with the Dolphins' needs in this draft. So, like, they're most likely going to be able to argue that they took the best player available, and it's on this list, right? Like cornerback, defensive tackle, edge rusher, or you mentioned linebacker. Like, we haven't had a 3-down stud linebacker, even though Jordan Brooks was good last year, in forever, right? Since what? There was one after Zach. What was the guy we signed from the Cardinals? I forget his name. Carlos Dansby.
Yeah.
Carlos Dansby's probably the really good one we had. Jahad Campbell at 13, you can argue to me as a football player. I put on the film, he's up there with the best players at that spot at 13. So, like, the linebacker from Alabama, like, he's a fantastic player. So, like, if you told me he's better than every offensive lineman because Mbu and Campbell are gone, like, I don't like any of these tackle guards at 13 after that, and you take a Campbell, I'm fine with that. You got the best player, most impactful player in your building, and that's how you win championships. That's our philosophy is taking Austin Jackson because we have to have somebody. Like, I don't want to take a corner because we have to have somebody. That's going to get you 9 wins, no playoff wins. That's how that happens. You know what I mean? Philadelphia says, okay, yeah, we need a corner, but this player at defensive end, we had him at number 6 on our board, and we're at pick 21. We had this corner, at number 8 on our board, and we're at pick 24 like last year. Quinyon Mitchell, they take him, right? And sometimes the need marries up to the best player available, and sometimes it doesn't. But do not mistake it, guys. And I tell everybody in this chat, you listen, you watch the draft, you listen to the show. The easiest way not to build the right team is by reaching for needs. But again, this draft, I think corner, defensive tackle, and offensive guard, 2 of those 3 could be best player available at pick 13. You agree with that philosophy? What's your draft philosophy, Kadeem? I haven't asked you that. Are you kind of similar, Bo?
Oh yeah, 100%. When I watch the draft, I don't watch the NFL Network like Roger Goodell. I tend to watch, I think it's ESPN, and I will never forget the year they had Jason Kelsey as a pundit, guess whatever the word you Americans use.
Yeah,
and
the Americans,
the Eagles are on the board, and I think they took Landon Dickerson with the pick.
Oh,
and he sat there and went, they just drafted my replacement, but he was like, I love it because he can, like, he's not playing this year because I'm playing this year, but and the Eagles do that every single year. The Eagles don't need more offensive linemen, but they're going to take them because they are the best person on the board. And like you said earlier, we'll figure it out. If we have to move you for a year or sit you for a year, it doesn't matter. And that's why the Eagles just won the Super Bowl. That's why the Eagles constantly have an amazing churn of offensive linemen who are always available. They just, like, over and over and over and over again. So yeah, my philosophy, like yours, is best player available. And I think my question to you would be, would you stay at pick 13 and pick an offensive lineman?
This is a good question, right? Only if 2 guys fell. If Will Campbell fell or Andre Membo from Purdue fell. Those are the only 2 guys I don't like. I'm not as high on Kelvin Banks Jr. as the rest of the draft pundits. I don't love Tyler Booker for this scheme at 13. Who else would be available? Josh Simmons is a pure left tackle. Yeah, I love Jonah Savanea from Arizona to move inside the guard, but not at 13. That's a little too rich for me. Yeah, if those 2 guys fell, yes. If not, I'm going another position. How about you?
Yeah, same. Because again, there's so many offensive linemen in this class where it's like I can go and get a genuine day 1 starter in day 3 or day 4.
Especially interior. And you want to take a guard, you can get the kid out of Georgia. There's 2 kids out of Georgia. Ezra, you can get Savanea if he falls. I mean, Donovan Jackson.
There's one guy. So like I said, we done our mock draft earlier, and Charlie mentioned taking this guy. To be fair, 2 guys. I think we went to take the first guy. He went before we could take him, so we took the second guy.
Who was the first guy? Do you remember?
Seth McLaughlin, the center from Ohio State.
Yeah.
And part of the reason we said that, again, is like, yes, you got Aaron.
This was round 2 or round 3?
Oh no, this was like in the third or fourth round, I think it was.
Yeah.
Because coming off an
Yeah.
injury, but he was like, go back and look at the Remington Trophy winners of the last few years. And you notice it's like Landon Dickerson, Tyler Linderbaum, Jackson Power Johnson, Seth McLaughlin. These guys are absolute dudes. Also, Garrett Bradbury in 2018. Go and get this guy in the third or fourth round if he's sitting there, and you'll work it out. So the guy we did take is someone who is a great friend of yours, Jackson Slater.
Oh,
So
I
we
was
took,
just gonna, I was just gonna mention. I love that dude, man. I love that
yeah,
dude,
but
guys. Shameless plug. Check out the interview we had with Jackson Slater.
100%.
Yeah,
But yeah, this is like, you have to go best player available. And you mentioned Patrick Paul earlier. You took him in the second round last year. Don't let taking Jackson Paul in the second round stop you from getting a left tackle in round 3. Like, if this guy is an absolute dude who's going
yeah,
to come in and play, then you do that. And either one or two things happen. You kick Patrick Paul to another position, or you go, hey, let the best man win. And when Patrick Paul loses, you go, okay, we'll figure something out with you. But I think, especially in this offensive lineman class, there are, if we're being brutally honest, there are some teams who just aren't going to take offensive linemen in the first 3 to 4 rounds.
yeah.
But there's enough of them where the Dolphins should, I'm not even saying double at the chip, 3 times. Grab 3 offensive linemen. And if you have to worry about safety as an unrestricted free agent, so be it. But the Dolphins need to fix this offensive line, and this is the best year to do it in recent years, in my opinion.
Yeah, I said this is a chance to. You can't change all your needs in one offseason. It's impossible. But you can start the transition to becoming more physical, athletic, and violent up front. Is what they need to do, and this draft will let them do that. And guess what? You don't let a good player prevent you from taking a great player. Look at Philadelphia. They drafted Jordan Davis. They took Jalen Reagor. You look at the draft. You have to maximize your draft slot and value. That's what you got to do. It's not even like the Dolphins have had solid drafts before, right? But it's not that. Are you maximizing your draft spot and value? I think that's where they've lacked in the years. They don't maximize and squeeze everything out of that pick on who's there and kind of the value of the position, either moving up, moving down, or like the guy who's there that's going to make the biggest impact and kind of a potential Pro Bowl. They don't get the best value to their picks. Like, that's the problem. I always say it's not sometimes who you take, man. It's who you don't take. And I think that draft capital is like gold. You got to maximize the value of it. Squeeze every inch, squeeze every piece of juice out of that lemon. The great teams do that. I just think we just do okay. Like, that's kind of our problem, right? Like, like let me tell you an example, right? And in 13, I like Malachi Starks a ton, right? A ton. But like, when I look at the board who's probably going to be there, yeah, you did a good job, but I'm not thinking you didn't maximize your draft value slot. If you take him over Will Johnson, or if one of the guards or tackles fall, and let me tell you something too, I like Kenneth Grant. Like, Kenneth Grant's my guy, even as high as 13. But like, I see Malachi Starks right now as a guy I think is a strong candidate to be at pick 13, because especially the safeties they brought in. I think Eman Wari is the other guy, but like Malafanu kind of got the big size like Eman Wari. I think what they lack right now is a true free safety center fielder. And kind of fluid hip movements that Starks has and his ball skills. Like, that'd be a good pick, right? Don't get me wrong. It's safe, and you won't be able to criticize Grier because he'll play on the field. But like, you didn't maximize the spot value, if that makes sense, right? Like, you know what I mean? It's solid. You got to really dig it deep into it, kind of beyond the layer of what it just looks good. Because we got Malachi Starks, the safety out of Georgia, but you're not maximizing your, especially if like a Will Johnson's there.
Spoiler alert: Will Johnson's the guy we took at pick 13. We were like, because I feel like there's probably 2 or 3 people the Dolphins should 100% take at pick 13. I think Will Johnson is one of them. I think the issue the Dolphins might get is, say Will Johnson and 2 defensive linemen that you want are gone, and the Dolphins are like, we can't pick here, but no one wants to move up. That's an issue the Dolphins might get. This isn't a super strong quarterback class, but you're gonna have teams, rushing up. So the Dolphins are kind of sitting there. The last thing I would want is for the Dolphins and they will never admit it. But it'd be like, we wanted to move back, we couldn't, so we ended up taking like a best player available, but we just didn't want that guy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, again, like, okay, we went Malachi Starks because we had no issue, and yes, he's going to be a day one starter. He'll make an impact, but you know, the better value might have been trading back to 19, for instance, and getting an extra day two, or sorry, round 2 or round 3 pick, and picking up a different safety, or like, and I think that can be the issue. Perhaps I wouldn't. I don't want the Dolphins to move back now, but I think this is one of those drafts where it's like, if I can at every pick, I'm moving back 5, 6 picks just to maximize that value. And kind of go from there.
Yeah, again, guys, everybody who's watching anywhere else but YouTube, come on YouTube, join us, hit the bells, like, subscribe to the channel, help support the channel. We really appreciate it. We're talking all things Dolphins with Kadeem Simmons from the Go Time Dolphins podcast. I agree with you. Now, the thing with pick 13, you said you would trade back. I got to wait until I'm on the clock, right?
Oh, course,
I got to see who's there. Because I'm going to give you guys a little spoiler alert who I think is a guy who nobody's talking about, but I think can fall because of the type of player he is. That's Mason Graham. Everybody has him going 4th or 5th. Dude, guys like Mason Graham, they're not loaded with physical traits. There's other guys you're going to fall in love with. He's just a really good football player. Like, you remember when Christian Wilkins fell to 13?
Yeah.
Like, he was a top 7 or 8. I'm not saying he'll be there at 13, but like if pick 11 and San Fran's on the clock and Mason Graham's on the board, not going to be shocked. Like, you think, because imagine, the 2 offensive linemen I think will go in front of the Dolphins. I just think there's certain types of players who fall, like safeties fall, defensive tackles who don't have these overwhelming drip with physical tools and look the part like Mason Graham. I think he's a guy who actually, not saying he makes it to 13, but like everybody's talking 4 or 5, and like I think it's closer to 10. Like that's a possibility. So I want to see who's on the board. Like if Will Johnson's on the board, no way. The 2 tackles on the board, no way. But again, I think you make a point. A point we need to bring up is we have no pick between 48 and 98.
Yeah,
that's 50 picks. And when we're talking about all these needs, we're not going to get them all. But like, you need more top 75 picks, top 100 picks. And that's a 50 pick gap. So like, I agree. If I can move back in round 1, if the board doesn't fall, and then move back in round 2, definitely. But the thing with the 13 is kind of a sweet spot, man. There's going to be a good player that falls to them, and honestly, the best player could be an edge player, right? Like, let's talk about that. Like, I moved the edge rusher to tier 2, and I will say this: I had Benjamin Albright on, right, to name drop on the free agent show. That was like a great show. He tells me like, "Hey, Zach Wilson's their target,"
Wilson, yeah.
And like 30 minutes later, they signed Zach Wilson, and because he's plugged in. He says, "Look, man, the Dolphins' philosophy right now is front 7 on the defense. That's probably why you haven't seen them sign a big corner. Like, it changed from Fangio to Weaver. Weaver wants to solidify this front 7." And I asked him kind of in the draft, what did you hear at the combine? He talked a lot of front 7. Like, he's saying, and you look, they went after Joey Bosa, right? There's rumors about them signing Ogba. Like, a Shamar Stewart, like, is there at 13? I know people probably be like, "Oh my God, they're taking an edge rusher," but like, it's the 2 guys we have. One didn't play last year. One's coming off another significant lower body injury. Like, Kadeem, I can't take edge rusher off the board because like Mikael Williams in a bigger one. Like, I think we need a bigger physical edge rusher to complement Chop for the future to have some assurance. Again, best player available, man. A Shamar Stewart, Jalen Walker. Could be a pick at 13. Like, do you agree that's sort of a position we're not talking enough about?
Yeah, I think especially if you look at, if you look at what the Eagles just done to the Chiefs, and we're gonna get pressure sending 4 guys. Like, we're not gonna have we're gonna send 4 guys over and over again. And I think it's also shout out Hammer, and everyone else in the comments. But it's also it's people think that Chris Grier is gone at the end of the season. Cool, fair enough. I actually don't think he is.
Yeah, I don't know. We're going to talk about that when we get the champ. I think there's a way he's still here, but not. We'll talk about that. Yeah. Go ahead.
but also he's not making moves like someone who's only going to be here for a few more months. So he might look at it and go, I'm not going to resign Jalen Phillips because he can't stay healthy, and I'm going to move on from Bradley Chubb, which leaves me with, one edge rusher in Chop Robinson. I'm going to go get someone early,
Yeah.
you know. So, 'cause again, he done it when he had what he paid for Bradley Chubb, he paid for Emmanuel Ogbar,
Yeah.
and then went Jalen Phillips, and everyone was like, "What?" And then he went Chop Robinson, and was like, "Sorry, like stop
Yeah.
doing this." But
Yeah.
again, it's if
Look at
you can.
look what he does. He usually takes look at 1 year ahead he plans for.
Yeah. So if you can add a dominant one-on-one edge rusher, and there's certain times you might bring in like a NASCAR package and go, hey, we're going
Yeah.
Phillips, Robinson, Chubb, and this new guy.
Jalen Walker, George is there.
Yeah. And we go, good luck trying to stop us. You're gonna have to play Josh Allen twice a year. You're gonna have to play who and Justin Fields. It's like, hey, we've
Yeah.
now got mobile quarterbacks. You're gonna be tough to tackle. I'm really sorry, guys. We're gonna, front load this front seven, and we're gonna grab a edge rusher in round one and a defensive tackle in round two. We're gonna go, hey, we're gonna beat you by the same way the Eagles just beat the Chiefs, and we're just gonna send the four, get pressure, and win that way.
Yeah. Anybody in the chat would, you guys are welcome to comment. Would you switch anything around these tiers? Do you agree with them? Like, do you think something should be switched? I think again, cornerback at 13. Let's go over the first tier real quick. The guys you like at 13 are the same as mine, Johnson, and you like Jahadi Barron out of Texas. I know a little bit about him more now because again, we're going over the cornerbacks this week, so I've been diving in the film. I had an opinion on him. I liked him. I liked him even more, and obviously that's for Thursday on the on season. Shout out, check it out this Thursday. But like, I like him a lot. I know he's the type of guy the Chris Grier is going to like. So like those two guys at 13, defensive tackle Grant and Graham, the two Michigan kids, and then guard, we'll say guard / tackle. Again, for me, Campbell, I play him anywhere. It doesn't matter. You just take him. And then Membo. Do you like Booker? Is there anything you would add in that first tier of need that you like? Maybe add a player or two?
Cornerback probably a position that I really haven't started looking at yet.
Okay.
Just because I've been so invested in this,
Yeah.
like offensive line class and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But again, corner is same way you speak about edge rusher. Corner is another position where Chris Grier is like, I just need corners, and I think I wouldn't be surprised if we trade for one. Same way like Jalen Ramsey came out of nowhere, and the only thing is that, like you said, you have 3 picks in the first 100, but a guy might go for a fifth because this isn't Madden. That's how the NFL works. So it might be a case where you go, actually, we're gonna, trade for a corner with a 5th round pick, someone with genuine NFL experience. So again, teams go, well, the Dolphins aren't going to take a corner at 13. Will Johnson, there you go. And I've said it for a while. I would not be surprised if the Dolphins move Jalen Ramsey to safety, and they go, hey, do you know what? We're just going to move you around. You're going to play safety. You're going to blitz off the edge, and we're going to have 2 studs, 2 younger guys at corner, and just go and enjoy yourself.
Yeah. What about I have tight end in tier 3. Do you see it as a bigger need than that, or do you think where the ball is going to be thrown? All of them are going to go to Jonnu Smith. I know there's a lot of this Tyler Warren at 13 talk. I'm not a fan of it. I like the player, not at 13. Do you see tight end in that tier 3, like where I have it? Still a need, but not a glaring, more of a want.
Yeah, I think the addition of Nick Westbrook-Ikhine has kind of gone. If everything goes to plan, you've basically got 4 wide receivers and Jonnu Smith. An additional tight end is a nice thing to have, basically. Tyler Warren is probably too early for the Dolphins at 13. If you want to move back and take him, cool, fair enough. The interesting player of all the tight ends is going to be Mason Taylor.
Oh yeah,
and it's that if he's there in the 2nd or 3rd round, the Dolphins go, let's go do it.
It's kind of creepy how he looks like Zach and Jason, because his. Who doesn't know? Like Jason married Zach's sister, and she has that kind kind of, a pretty girl, but like has that same Zach face. They look just like it's like he almost has to be a Dolphin, right? Like it's
Yeah,
crazy.
and I think it's look
He's a good player, man. Good
yeah,
player.
had an amazing combine.
Yeah.
Where people were like,
Senior Bowl week too, he's good.
yeah, like let's be honest, he's not a first round pick. That's not
I've
gonna
seen
happen.
some of that stuff. That's crazy talk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. But if you trade back and get an additional second or a third, I wouldn't be angry if he gets taken,
Yeah.
in the second or third round. But again, a lot of it depends on what you do with your earlier picks and whether you've acquired more picks. And again, 3 picks in the top 100 in this draft class for me isn't good enough. You need to be around the 5 or 6 mark.
Would you consider kind of what they did? I think they will consider this. Like if you the compensatory formula, it's weird, right? We thought we were going to have another one with Wilkins. We didn't, but like knowing with Javon Holland, just a possibility here, and even like a Robert Jones, like if he starts somewhere like crazy or not, he played a lot of snaps last year. He was a starter. Like you might get a fifth or something or fourth. Taking that into account next year, you're going to have an extra third. Would you like take that pick and something else to try to get back in, like one of your fourths and the third next year to try to get into like the 70s?
Oh yeah, 100%. Because again, my picks next year are a next year problem. I have an
Yeah.
entire season to play. And again, you mentioned, the comp pick you might get back from a Javon Holland. The one that no one really wants to talk about is if Anthony Weaver has another good year and someone picks him up, that's what, like 2 third-round picks. So and again, like no one really wants that to happen because it's Anthony Weaver and he's a good DC.
Yeah.
But again, there's multiple ways for the Dolphins to get extra picks. You trade Tyreek Hill,
Yeah.
like there's
Fortunately, I
guy.
don't think they're doing it. I
No,
don't know.
but and again,
Yeah.
it's just,
Yeah, I got you.
but it's also a case of if you mess around and you get 3 offensive linemen and you actually go, do you know what? We're gonna move on from Austin Jackson or Patrick Paul or whoever. Like again, there's ways to get draft picks. And if we're being brutally honest, if the season starts off bad and the Dolphins do blow it up, then that's how you get your draft picks because everyone's basically out of the building.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a proponent, if everybody knows, of trading Tyreek now, even though you're not going to get more than probably a third round pick because of the money that some team would have to take on, or even if you take on. But like, I just think a change of direction, change of the franchise, change of the culture, the demeanor. I just think it needs a change. But he's a great player. But at some point, this is your last year. Would you get anything for him? I know a lot of people disagree, but I think Tua can win and throw the ball without Tyreek. I think it's nonsense that you have to have. How about get a bigger receiver on one side and Jalen Waddle, who you drafted 6 overall, let him do what you brought him in to do it. Hopefully he stays healthy. You don't need 2 of the same guy. But even though Tyreek's 1 of 1, like he is 1 of 1. Like I've never seen anything like him before. But like you got to know when the arrow's going down. Sometimes you got to have foresight and know when to get out in front of these things. And that's what New England used to do. Like I'm not a huge Bill Belichick fan, but the one thing he was good at is knowing when to get off a player and when not to. Now he's really good at. All right, so I think that kind of wrapped up the draft needs, the tier 1, tier 2. I hope this will change. We'll do this again, and like they could sign, in a dream world to Tevon Jenkins. I would love that. Not going to happen. He's still out there, I think, and that takes guard. Maybe to tier 3, like, you know what I mean? Like, so these things can change. This is just after the first week kind of free agency. And, but I think we agree right now, cornerback and defensive tackle are the 2 glaring needs. And we're going to dive into the cornerback group Thursday. And I got good news. There's some good guys at the top of this list. Jason Sarney and myself might have a special guest too. I'm not sure yet. I got to get with Jason. All right. I want to talk about, quickly here, the new front office hire we had. Champ Kelly, right? And at first I thought not big deal. He's just a Reggie McKenzie kind of replacement, right? I don't know how you feel about it, Kadeem, but like as I looked more into it, this guy started his career under Mike Shanahan, and we know McDaniel is from that Shanahan tree. And a lot of the players they signed, a few players, including James Daniels, Artie Burns, and a few other guys, have kind of connection to Champ Kelly. So do you think this is a situation where this guy might have a little more juice in the building than like the Allens and the McKenzies that we brought in a few years ago, knowing his connection? I'll go over where he's from real quick. 2007 Broncos. First, he was a scout for the Broncos. I believe he got promoted to assistant director of pro personnel. Then he joined Chicago in 2015 as their team director of pro scouting. Then he was promoted to their assistant director of player personnel. His responsibilities with the Bears are grading the top 100 draft prospects, scouting and free agency. So he had a big role with the Bears. Then in the Raiders is where he took the next step. He was the assistant GM, I believe. And then he even took over in 23 when Dave Ziegler got got canned. He was the interim GM, and then he even stayed around when they hired Tom Telesco. So usually when a guy stays around a regime, that means he's pretty well thought of in the building. And then this past February, they decided to part ways mutually. He's a guy who also interviewed, I wrote it down, in 2019, he interviewed with the GM candidate with the Jets, 2020 with the Falcons, 21 with Denver, and then this past offseason with Jacksonville. So I think the difference with him is he's more of a young, up-and-coming personnel guy than the guys who are already kind of on the way out, like a Reggie McKenzie. Do you see kind of this guy having a little juice in the building, Kadeem?
Early on, probably not. But I also think it's good to go and get another voice who's been in different buildings. Again, I find it really funny that people can't stand Chris Grier, but also think Chris Grier brought in his replacement and are happy with that. It's like, what on Chris Grier's done? It's like, well, again, you can't have both ways. But again, no, Champ Kelly, it's people are making the parallels and the links to some of the guys the Dolphins have brought in who may have been in the building when he was elsewhere and all that kind of stuff. Listen, it's like with most things, I'm sure the teams that he's been at and they've made good picks while he was there, he will get credit for that, even if he had nothing to do with it.
Right.
It's like, he was in the building and this team drafted that person. It's like, okay, but did he recommend that person? Did he even scout that person? But no, it's good to. I can't imagine he's going to come in and be like, okay, we're doing things this way, or I would do that.
Oh yeah, of course not. Yeah,
but it's it's like, okay, if he is given a voice, at best it's a different set of vibes. And be like, well, actually, have you considered this? It's the people that have been making the decisions in Miami for the last few years, they probably all start to think the same. So having someone else go, by the way, have you thought about this? Have you considered doing, zigging when everyone else is zagging? It's like, okay, do you know what? We will take that on board. And yeah, I don't think it's a too many cooks in the kitchen situation, and I hope it's not. But yeah, I don't know what to think about someone who, up until a week ago, no one cared about and no one knew about, if they in the nicest way possible.
I agree. I didn't know who he was, but like any move they make, I go into it, right? I peel the layers back. I mentioned all the interviews he's had. Difference is this guy was considered around the league like as a bright guy and as a GM candidate, even in Jacksonville this past year, right? So like, and then in 1920, now why didn't he get the jobs? I don't know that, but like he's been in the room at the table with the shot at him. And I just wonder what his connection to McDaniel is. And you bring up a good point. Like, why would Grier first of all, did Grier solely hire him? Like, did McDaniel come in and say, hey, I know this guy, I like him? Did Garfinkel have an influence? We don't know. But like, even if Grier did hire him, like you could promote Chris Grier and some like assistant vice president, and this guy's the GM, and like he's making the draft day decisions, he's making the roster decision, and it kind of because they like Grier and they might not want to get rid of him, but like you put him in a more of a oversee position, and it might actually be better for Chris. I would like him gone. You know how I feel about him, but like because he's more of a connector than a stand on the table conviction guy. And I think if you can get somebody who's, if they survive this, right? Like if this goes south, like everything's blown up, right? Like with Grier, I'm not even sure 100% that what actually happens. But like, if they say you win 9 games or 10 games again, let's say you make the playoffs but lose, and it's kind of in the middle again. You want to change. You kind of got to do something. You kind of promote Grier, but like he has actually less football involvement, and like this guy's there. Okay, it's on me. The decision is mine, and maybe he has a connection with McDaniel that we don't know about. So I just think I thought it was like when Marvin Allen or Reggie McKenzie got hired, especially McKenzie. I was like, okay, like I just see this guy as a threat, and not necessarily that Grier's gone, but like kind of pushes Grier to another position. And this might show that McDaniel might have a little bit more juice in the building, like over Grier. Like, you know what I mean? Like they brought somebody who's connected. Maybe he wants somebody. Remember, McDaniel didn't, pick Grier as his personnel guy, right?
Yeah.
Like that we don't know that. Maybe this guy's more aligned and has the same kind of thinking under that tree. So I just thought it was interesting that I want to bring up an article, right? That was a little portion of an interview that he had. I think this kind of, we'll see. The question was, every GM has a doctrine, a principle, belief as their style. Some see draft picks as gold. Some see as capital to barter for proven players. What is Champ Kelly's doctrine of roster building? His response was, as it pertains to my philosophy on team building in the NFL, you must start with the quarterback position. The quarterback is one of the most difficult positions to play in all sports. In addition, I believe in the building, the team is built from inside out, meaning to start with the offense and defensive fronts. The key is being able to attain the quarterback, then able to protect that player through scheme and skill. Next, we must be able to disrupt the opponent's passer on the defensive side of the ball through both rush and coverage. All right, so it sounds good. Like it sounds what we wanted. Quarterback, build from inside out. How much does it really mean? I don't know. Like, this was from a 2023 interview in SI. You could probably look on the web and find the rest of it. So, like, yeah, kind of the opposite of what Grier did, right? He went from outside in. So it sounds good. Like quarterback, start with the quarterback, franchise QB, protect him, build the scheme that fits with him, and then get to the quarterback on defense. So sounds good, right, Kadeem?
Yeah, I think, Chris Grier has been GM of the Dolphins since 2016.
Yeah.
But he kind of had like Mike Tannenbaum kind of oversee or like in the building. Once Mike left and it was just Chris Grier, that's what, 2019?
2019, the Christian Wilkins draft when they brought Flores in.
Yeah. But again, it's like the first pick of the Chris Grier by himself ever was Christian Wilkins. And then he gets his quarterback the following year, and then it's Austin Jackson. Chris Grier has quite early on taken trench players. Again, he tried to build it inside out. The issue is that it hasn't worked. Christian Wilkins is gone. Raekwon Davis is gone. Austin Jackson, you probably should have moved up.
I think, right. And I think, too, not to cut you off, like the 21 draft is where you made a mistake. Like Penny Sewell over Jalen Waddle that's keep building inside out. Like, that's what happened.
When did Armstead join the Dolphins?
I think it was that year or the year after. But I mean, you could put Sewell right in the right side, like again.
Oh no, so he was 22.
Again, we talked about squeezing the value of every lottery ticket you have in the draft. That's the perfect example, guys. Like Waddle on paper, good player. We drafted a really good player, but did you squeeze all the value out of that pick? No, he's a gold jacket player on the right side named Penny Sewell, and you're not having these problems. If you got to move Jackson to guard, move him to guard. I mean, Austin Jackson was not doing anything to make me not take a Penny Sewell. That's very clear, right? Like, so I think that maybe that's, kind of, but who knows? We don't know. Again, you made a great point. Like, I'm not going to go back and look at Champ Kelly, what drafts were in Oakland. I don't know what he had to say or didn't have to say in that room. You know what I mean? That's ridiculous, right? Like, he could have liked this player, but Tom Telesco or Dave Ziegler override him or vice versa. Like, he liked the guys they took and it didn't work out. So we don't know. Anything else to add on Champ Kelly or
just let's wait and see.
Yeah.
Until he is officially given the keys and Chris Grier has no say in anything, I'm sure he's just going to be, another
voice in the room.
Yeah, the exact phrase I was going to use. And anyone saying that, Champ Kelly has, he found this person, it's like, unless you were in the room with Champ Kelly, then you don't really know that. You're just trying to connect dots that don't need to be connected. And, let's just take a step back. Let's see how things go.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think not. I don't. I think that's way too far ahead to think that he's somebody they found their replacement if things fall apart. Like if things really fall apart, like Champ Kelly and Chris Grier are probably gone.
Yeah,
So like I just think he's all of the guys they've brought in with Grier, he's the most like up and coming and has I could see him in that role. Not necessarily taking it and with the Shanahan connection. I thought it was interesting.
yeah.
All right, guys. I think we'll wrap it up there. I know it's late for Kadeem. Guys, everybody in the chat, Hammer, DSG, Frank, Kenny, Cap, Tony, Mia, Beach, Steve, Bobby Finstock, Bobby from the Dive Bar. If I missed your name, everybody, we appreciate DSG. I appreciate you coming on the show. Again, please, guys, come over to YouTube, subscribe, hit that little bell. We'll be on Thursday on 8 p.m. in the on season with Jason Sarney and myself, breaking down the number one position in need, the cornerback position draft group. And we might have a surprise we don't know yet. But before we go, Kadeem, tell everybody about the Go Time Dolphins podcast, where they can find you, what you got going on there.
So yeah, Go Time Dolphin podcast, myself and my good friend Charlie Touche, on YouTube, on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get podcasts from. I am always talking nonsense, retweeting funny stuff on X, aka Twitter, on Academe Simmons. But yeah, Go Time Dolphins on YouTube, on Twitter, on Blue Sky, which we haven't really got up and running
Yeah,
yet. But
I don't have
yeah,
one yet. Got to get one. Yeah.
I would say this to you on air. I would go and grab Finn's Faithful
Yeah,
on Blue Sky before someone else does. That's the only reason why I don't go Tam Dolphins. Because the last thing I want is to go there and be like, I don't even have my
yeah.
own podcast name. So, but yeah, I am on social media on Go Tam Dolphins or at Kadeem Simmons.
Yeah, I gotta mention too. I'll be on Finn's TV tomorrow with Sarni. We'll be making an appearance there, so looking forward to that. All right, man, Kadeem, get some rest. I don't know how you do it, man. This late night stuff, but you are a true Dolphin fan. Everybody, go subscribe here, but also subscribe to Kadeem's channel, man. They have great content over there. They just had a 7-round mock draft, so you guys need to check that out. All right, guys. As always, stay Fins faithful. We are out.